Here's your wrestling news for August 15th, 2021. And your headlines for today include Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks pulled from WWE event due to unforeseen circumstances. Kevin Owens uploads an apology video. More backstage details about John Cena and Roman Reigns promo. Vince McMahon's reaction. Seth Rollins seemingly responds to John Cena throwing shade on WWE SmackDown. John Cena posts tribute to CM Punk. Punk reacts. CM Punk's AEW debut mentioned during NFL Network programming, how often Punk will wrestle in AEW, possible first opponent, and more. Mia Yim doesn't want apologies over shade thrown at her over Keith Lee's absence. Ric Flair appears at AAA TripleMania alongside Andrade El Idolo. AEW wrestler gets big props within AEW for wrestling through injury. Former WWE wrestler teases WWE SummerSlam plans, and more. We're kicking off with WWE, whose Saturday Night Live event was in Charlotte, North Carolina, but the entire roster advertised couldn't make it to the show. SmackDown Women's Champion Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks were meant to be at the show, but were pulled for what was described to fans as unforeseen circumstances. It's odd that neither appeared on the show, given that both women were at Friday's SmackDown in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we're hoping both are able to return to the ring in time for their WrestleMania 37 rematch at SummerSlam on August 21st. The last time someone was out for unforeseen circumstances, it was Randy Orton, who spent several weeks away for what was later called personal reasons. Hopefully, Banks and Belair will be back far sooner than the Viper was, as their SummerSlam match is expected to be a show stealer next Saturday. That live event in Charlotte also didn't see Kevin Owens, which came as a disappointment to two fans in particular. In a tweet directed at Owens and John Cena, two girls, Maddie and Addison, had created signs for the two former world champions, unaware that the prizefighter wouldn't be appearing. On Twitter, Owens wanted to make sure the fans knew he saw their signs and created a video message, letting them know he wouldn't be there, but that he thought the signs were awesome. This was a classy move from the former Universal Champion, which will go a long way with the fans, who will have had a great time even without Owens being on the show. We're not sure why Owens wasn't on the show, but we expect he was just getting to enjoy a Saturday for himself. But he took the time out to give two young fans a very special video message. SmackDown news next, as this week's show kicked off with a hellacious back-and-forth promo segment with John Cena and Roman Reigns that saw everything from AEW's Jon Moxley to Cena's failed engagement with Nikki Bella brought up. We previously reported that this masterclass in mic work was produced by Jamie Noble, but he wasn't the only one involved. Ringside News reports that though Noble was the producer, Michael Kirschenbaum wrote the structure, but the actual promos themselves were written by the men involved. Cena wrote his own part, whilst Reigns and Paul Heyman handled the Tribal Chief's words, making for an interesting segment for the fans and those backstage. One member of Creative told Ringside News, "I don't even know if Cena and Reigns talked before the segment," and added that Reigns and Heyman weren't in the gorilla position just before they came out, with many backstage wondering as to where they were. Neither man had any rehearsal before their segment, and the source added that they're not sure if Roman or Cena met beforehand or if either knew what the other was going to say. Calling the promo genuinely organic, the member of Creative added that it was a sellout backstage, as everyone wanted to hear what they had to say. Together, Cena and Reigns created some magic in the ring, and we're excited to see what the two will do when they eventually collide at SummerSlam. Cena and Reigns threw some serious shots at each other on Friday, in a rare instance of Vince McMahon trusting people to create their own promos. Typically, promos are written word for word, and superstars have to perform them verbatim, and this week's creative freedom certainly worked for everyone involved. That same member of Creative also told Ringside News that Vince McMahon himself loved the segment and how far both the champion and challenger went to get those genuine reactions. It's rare for the chairman to allow this amount of creative freedom, but it certainly paid off, and it goes to show just how much he trusts Cena, Reigns, and Heyman on the mic. One especially scathing line from Cena was that Roman almost ruined Seth Rollins during their Shield days, and that's a line the Messiah of SmackDown definitely heard. On Twitter, the former Universal Champion didn't name Cena explicitly, but he did reference those who use his name, saying that it validates his influence in WWE, adding that he's always thriving. Ending with the hashtag Rollins Forever, Seth is certainly full of himself and believes that the reference to him during SmackDown only shows how important he is. As for Rollins, he'll be facing Edge on Saturday at SummerSlam, and a win over the Hall of Famer will no doubt put him in line for a Universal title match against whoever leaves Allegiant Stadium on August 21st with the gold. Former SmackDown Women's Champion Bayley won't be in action at SummerSlam, but she will be watching and is part of the C Nation. On Twitter, Bayley shared a quote from Roman Reigns, who said in an interview that he carried the WWE over the past year, and said it'd be wrong for people to, quote, lie to ourselves and say Bayley stood out over the past 12 months. Responding, Bayley said that she's Team Cena all the way, as the role model is looking for the tribal chief to get some serious comeuppance after these comments at her expense. This past Friday's promo was truly a segment of epic proportions, and even included a reference to CM Punk, who's expected to debut for AEW next week. Speaking about their Universal title match at SummerSlam, Cena threatened to win the title, leave through the crowd, and blow a kiss goodbye, all actions made by Punk during his infamous title victory at Money in the Bank 2011. Now, Punk has responded to what Cena had to say, as on his Instagram story, he shared a picture of Lord Voldemort from Harry Potter, known in the wizarding world as He Who Must Not Be Named. Ever since his walkout of WWE in January 2014, the company have done everything to avoid naming Punk, making the comparison to Harry Potter's main antagonist very appropriate. The fact that Cena referenced to Punk, albeit not by name, is a huge deal, and he wasn't the only former WWE superstar referenced. In that same segment, Reigns referred to Cena's doomed relationship with Nikki Bella, while Cena said that Reigns had scared Dean Ambrose out of WWE, and we'll have to see who eventually stands tall next Saturday. Cena didn't refer to Punk by name on TV, but on Instagram, the 16-time WWE World Champion made it clear who he was talking about. On the site, Cena posted an image of Punk from Money in the Bank 2011 blowing a kiss to Vince McMahon as he leaves with the WWE Championship, the very same thing Cena has threatened to do at SummerSlam. Like all of his Instagram posts, Cena didn't give a caption to the image, but many fans connected it to what he had to say on SmackDown. Cena may indeed be the greatest threat to Roman Reigns' tenure as Universal Champion, which is now in its 350th day, and we'll have to see if Cena can make history and become a 17-time WWE World Champion next week. CM Punk may have been referenced on WWE TV, but that hasn't stopped the reports that he's joining AEW, which are now getting major traction outside of the wrestling world. During last night's NFL Network programming, Adam Rank mentioned Punk's anticipated debut, saying it's the most anticipated debut in Chicago. This was in reference to quarterback Justin Fields' debut in the Bears vs. Dolphins game, with the gist being that Punk's debut will mean more than Fields. Punk's debut has a lot of people talking, and those voices are getting louder with every passing day. And we can only hope that all this anticipation leads to something next week when AEW Rampage comes to Chicago. It's at next week's second episode of Rampage, strangely named The First Dance, that Punk is expected to debut, and fans will get to see a lot of the former WWE World Champion. Neither AEW nor Punk have confirmed Punk's impending debut, but it's been reported that Punk is 100% set to appear at an event in the Windy City. Ringside News now reports that Punk will be on the company's programming, quote, nearly every week, according to a source, and that he'll wrestle 10 to 12 times a year for the company. That's the current deal, but it's reported that Punk could always agree to wrestle more often if he sees fit. Punk has already returned to the ring, as he reportedly showed no signs of ring rust while filming scenes for the upcoming Stars series Heels, and we'll have to see who Punk faces first as part of this arrangement, if he does join the company next week. There's been plenty of talk about who Punk will face first in AEW, and right now, the betting odds say that either Daniel Bryan, who's rumored to be joining in September, or Darby Allin will be his first opponent. Like Punk, Allin has a lot of tattoos, with one on his chest saying, "Nothing is over until you're underground," a line that wrestling fans naturally associate with the former TNT champion. That line has become a talking point, as on Instagram, CM Punk reminisced about a big night in his ROH career and concluded with the exact phrase Allen has on his chest. On a recent Dynamite, Allen teased a match with Punk, saying he wants to face the best in the world, although Punk said he believes that the best in the world is Daniel Bryan. All signs are pointing to an Allen-Punk feud very soon, perhaps at September's All Out pay-per-view, in what'd probably be the biggest match in the young career of the former TNT champion. Earlier this month, Keith Lee finally let fans know why he was missing from WWE TV for so long, from February to July, and contrary to what some fans believed, it wasn't because of his fiancée Mia Yim. Some had accused Yim of causing Lee to test positive, but it was the other way around, as Lee was the first to test positive, and Yim later contracted the disease from him because she refused to leave his side. The former Retribution member isn't shy about speaking her mind, as she grilled fans during Lee's absence, making it clear that the situation was none of their business, and thankfully some, but not all of those people who accused Yim are now apologizing. On Twitter, Yim said that she doesn't need any apologies, saying, "Instead of apologies, when a public figure, or anyone for that matter, asks for privacy, please respect it. Let's learn from this and be better in the future. Thank you to all who respected us, sent prayers and positivity during this time." Yim and Lee have been through a lot this year, and Yim is grateful for her fiancé and their fans, but there will always be some people who spread negativity rather than honoring the simple request for privacy. Last week, Ric Flair was released from his contract with WWE, a departure he requested, and now the Nature Boy has already appeared for another company. At last night's AAA TripleMania event, the Nature Boy was ringside alongside his future son-in-law Andrade El Idolo, who faced AAA Mega Champion Kenny Omega. Nobody expected Flair's non-compete clause with WWE to end so suddenly, and it's likely that he was never under any clause, given how quickly he was able to appear elsewhere. It's been reported that Flair will be heading to AEW as soon as he can, and there's been speculation he'll be working alongside Andrade, and that seems more likely than ever after last night's show. More from AEW, as Women's World Champion Britt Baker recently got injured, but that isn't stopping her from getting back in the ring. We now have more details about her injury, as Fightful Select reports, Baker did sustain the injury during the match with Nyla Rose, and we're told specifically the spot happened on a Death Valley driver spot towards the latter part of the match. It's also said that Baker is getting some big props within AEW for working through the injury, as she carried on with the match against Rose and wrestled for another 4 minutes with no changes being made to the match. The report added that Baker's injury was a hiccup for her reign, and thankfully didn't end it, as her time on top of the AEW women's division shows no signs of slowing down. And we're ending today with Nikki Bella, who hasn't competed in WWE in nearly 3 years, but this year, she and her sister Brie became WWE Hall of Famers. In the years since her last match, Nikki has focused on rehabbing her neck, even getting physical with Bayley at WrestleMania, and now the former Divas champion could have a huge role at SummerSlam. On Twitter, Nikki teased an appearance next Saturday, saying she was looking through her closet and trying to decide what to wear for SummerSlam. The fact that Nikki was referenced during this week's SmackDown is especially interesting, as the former champion may be trading her stilettos for her wrestling boots very soon. Well guys, that's our news for today. Please share your comments below. Also hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to receive all notifications. And as always, thanks for watching.